Hello, and welcome to American Riviera Bank's Regional Pulse. This is Michelle Martinich, Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer at the bank. Today, I'm excited to have Peter Rupert with me. Peter's a professor of economics at the University of California at Santa Barbara, as well as the director of the Economic Forecast Project and associate director of the Laboratory for Aggregate Economics and Finance at UCSB. Wow, Peter, that is a mouthful, and I realize that's a lot of titles, and we say economics, and please don't tune out, people. I promise Peter is a very exciting, dynamic, and very entertaining speaker, so you're going to love it.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Really appreciate it. Thanks. Great to be here. Amid these crazy times, but here we are.
Here we are. So let's go ahead and start with the economy.
Right. So let's go back just a little bit. Let's go back right before the Great Recession, where our economy here in Santa Barbara and basically nationally was doing fantastic. We were down to about 3.5% unemployment rate here in the county. Things looked really great. Hit the Great Recession. Unemployment rates spiked up to roughly 10%, 10.5% here in the county. Same nationwide. I mean, it was pretty much widespread. And then it took us about 8 or 9 years to get back to about 3.5% unemployment rate. So it took a long time, which is typical of recessions and recoveries. Now fast forward to the pandemic. Again, we're in October of 2019, there we were at about 3% unemployment rate here in the county. The pandemic comes along and we're shut down. Immediately spikes up to 14.5% in no time. This was just happened so fast, obviously, because of many political decisions to shut us down. However, once we reopened at some point, it came back down pretty fast, and now it's down about 7.5%. So in just a few months, it went from 14.5% to 7.5%, which we've never seen before, by the way.
That's a roller coaster.
Very big roller coaster. That's correct. Now, if you look a little bit more at the details, what happened, basically, if you look at the unemployment rate, I told you the standard unemployment rate, around 14%. However, if you look at the unemployment rate of people like in leisure and hospitality sector, that was 40%.
Wow.
So we know that these things got shut down and shut down hard, and they were hit in different sectors. There are many sectors of the economy that really haven't been touched very much. I mean, probably, in the banking sector, you guys are doing fantastic.
We've been working more than we normally do.
And if you talk to, title companies, they've never been this busy in 40 years. You look at the stock market, et cetera. So all these things, except for GameStop, of course, but let's not go there.
Yeah.
So basically that sector got hit really hard. And the worrisome thing to me, and I think to many people, is exactly the fact that those people who could least afford to be laid off were laid off. And these are minimum wage workers, many minorities, et cetera, who, when you look at the data and you look at average hourly earnings in the United States, it spiked up to the highest it's ever been in terms of year-over-year growth. And it's not because people made more money, it's because all the people who were making less money were laid off.
I know CPAs and bankers, we have a bad rap for being poor tippers, but I have definitely been doing my part to flip that right now because those people are really struggling and they're victims of political choices.
That's right. And so if we go back and think about the pandemic, did we do the right thing? Very hard to know if we did the right thing. There are so many different opinions out there. I can tell you that a lot of economists have been working on this. And the way we start is a little technical thing. It's called the SIR model, which is the standard in epidemiology of how you look at the spread of viruses. And it was developed back in the 1920s. And basically what it does is SIR stands for susceptible, infected, and recovered.
Interesting.
So, so we start out in early 2020. No one's infected, everyone's susceptible, and no one's recovered. Then some people get infected, and then it spreads. And the way it spreads, obviously, is something called the effective transmission rate, R, they called it, which basically says, if I'm infected, how many people do I infect? Now, what you need to have is that number less than 1.
Oh, wow.
Because if I infect 2 people, now those 2 people can infect 2 people, and that's how it spreads. So the decision was made very early on in the middle of March to shut everything down, and that is everything. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of people complained about that. It's one of these things that we really didn't know enough. We had very little information. However, I think, in hindsight, we did the wrong thing. And I think that if you look at the people who, what was the goal? Well, if the goal is to, flatten the curve, as they said, the virus spread curve, so that our healthcare system is not overwhelmed, well, we did okay on that. However, what that did was it made our unemployment insurance overwhelmed. And by the way, I just read a really bad rap, I think, from the state auditor's office about the Employment Development Department here in California, about how slow they were to get many payments done in the unemployment insurance system. Well, let's go back. Who was prepared for this pandemic? Tell me.
No one. No one.
No one. Now, should we have been prepared? Well, yes. Now, but I'll get to that in a second, what it means to be prepared. But, we had a worldwide pandemic in 1958 and 59.
Yeah.
It killed over 1 million people worldwide, killed over 100,000 people in the United States. We had another one in 68 to 70 with 3 waves in some places, 2 waves in the United States, killed another 100,000 people in the United States. These things aren't rare. They happen. They're going to happen more often probably given the global nature of our the global travel. Yeah. And by the way, in 2005, President Bush gave an hour-long talk to the National Institute of Health saying the next big problem we're going to have in our economy is a pandemic.
Wow.
And he actually set up, I think, something called influenza.gov or something like that for us to be prepared. President Obama, same speech, how bad a pandemic would be.
Interesting.
September of 2019, the Council of Economic Advisors for President Trump wrote a 40-some page report on the effects of a pandemic if it occurred. How many people would lose their lives, what the unemployment rate would do, just a few months before the pandemic.
Wow.
We were warned. We've been warned. Now, let's go back and think about, suppose we know a pandemic's going to happen every 20 years or every 10 years. What should we do? Well, should hospitals say, we're going to have enough room in case a pandemic happens and have half of their hospital vacant for 10 years?
Well, the economics of that aren't going to work.
The economics of that are not going to work. Should the Employment Development Department have, gotten a supercomputer, hired hundreds of extra people to process these things for 10 years being idle? I think not. And so if you talk to any person in the business community, they don't want to have inventory such that, boy, if 1 million people do walk in, we'll have goods for them.
We'll be ready.
We'll be ready. So, I think it's a very bad rap to say that people weren't ready. Our government wasn't ready for this. Our supply chain wasn't ready for this. I didn't stock up on enough toilet paper, obviously. So
I made it through somehow, but
right.
It was tight. It was close.
I had friends who bought an extra freezer and an extra refrigerator. They bought 50 pounds of flour that came with 2 pounds of yeast.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Now we did, because there was a panic setting in, and some of it was to try and control that emotional response. And so here at the bank, we finally realized we could just ask our cleaning company to give us some toilet paper. I'm not really sure anybody wanted to use it because it was the cheap stuff from the cleaning company, but it gave a sense of calm.
Sure.
And there was just so much panic and irrational decisions of everything that were coming out of that. So it was funny how toilet paper was our calming and angst-ridden thing. Yeah.
I mean, I went for like 3 weeks going to the store to just try to buy some flour because I like to bake bread. Nope, no flour anywhere. And, so it was, panic mode set in, obviously. Again, were houses ready for this? Some houses are ready for earthquakes here in California. They have some extra supplies. No one was ready for a pandemic. So, I think it's very lucky that this particular strain of virus, was able to end up with a vaccine in a pretty short amount of time, relatively speaking. So I think that was pretty fabulous, what people did.
And the preparedness is interesting when I think about education.
Right.
So I have 3 kids at every different stage. I got a high schooler, a junior high, and an elementary. And so I'm watching what's happening there. And my high schooler is a senior, so I'm paying attention to what's happening at the college level. But even locally, that idea of somehow being prepared, you saw it in our community where Montecito Union knew how to turn on it. They had the tools in place because, unfortunately, they had to go to a remote learning environment. But yet, so they're in school, and they kind of didn't miss a beat, and the rest of our community is really struggling because we aren't prepared. We don't have the resources to have sitting waiting. We've never had to do it before. We don't know how to do it.
No, that's exactly right. I think that, preparedness is one thing, but I think the pandemic has taught us a lot of things, basically, And in terms of education, boy, economists have done so much work on education. I think there are more papers written on the economics of education, human capital acquisition, than any other topic. And so, we kind of know a lot about it. We don't necessarily know how to educate people, but, we certainly know the facts. And so let me now turn to, and I think obviously we were right to be concerned about, who was going to become infected. If the goal was to reduce deaths, then we did the wrong thing. If we want to reduce deaths, what you tell people is, if you're over 65 or 70, stay home.
Right.
Just stay home. We'll pay you to stay home. We'll hire services to deliver things to your house. That would have been a lot cheaper than having everybody in the economy who was non-essential stay home. That was just a crazy thing. So if the goal was to reduce deaths, that's probably a better way to go.
Right.
Secondly, I think things could have been done a lot better regionally. I know that, federally they said, okay, states have the right to do whatever they want, and then the state says the counties have the right. That was kind of the right thing, because if you look at how this spread, it spread in some places a lot more than others.
Correct.
Okay, so you didn't have to shut everything down, number one. And if you're going to do it, I think it was the bad timing. So when I was telling you about this SIR model, it basically says that at some point the virus is going to peak. And then without a vaccine, all you can rely on is what's called herd immunity, where enough people get the virus, they become immune to it, and then they can't spread it.
But that's a huge number.
It's a huge number. It's obviously a huge number. It's like 70% or something like that. It's really big. It's not the best way to go but it's the only way to go if you don't have a vaccine.
Right.
Now, so in the short run, I get it. Do I think we made some mistakes? I do. But, just like what the government said was, we're just going to give everybody a $1,200 check or whatever that number was. And, the EDD also got blamed for some people, because you cut some corners, some people got unemployment insurance that maybe shouldn't have. Okay, that's fine. We didn't have the time to sit back and to call everybody in the United States, do you really need the $1,200? No, just get the money out there. The government shut us down, so now pay us, right? So I think that was fair in some sense. So that's in the short run. Let's talk a little bit about the longer run, especially.
How are we going to pay all this back?
Oh, it's crazy. No, it's just not, like I said, just not the current stuff. And what you alluded to with the education part, unfortunately, we do know a lot about missing schooling and how, if you do miss schooling, how it affects not just your current skill level, but your future.
Yeah.
And so you can earn, somewhere between 2 to 4% less over your lifetime just because you missed 30, 40 days of school. I mean, It's really amazing. And by the way, these studies have been done worldwide. Obviously, we haven't done it during the pandemic, but we have done these studies on things like mandatory school closures if there's a flood or there's different around the world, if there's fires. So we do have a lot of evidence on missed schooling. Now, what you also said earlier was how this is affecting people. And what I worry about is the longer term. So right now, roughly 40% of all of the unemployed people have been unemployed for more than 27 weeks. That's a loss of skill. They may not get back to their same jobs. They don't necessarily have the skills to go to other jobs. That can affect these individuals for a long time.
Well, and what will the jobs be? I just think that there's a transformation that was coming, especially on the retail side, and it's like a tidal wave now that people are going to be less inclined. My mom's comfortable shopping on the internet now at Christmas time, and before she would have been needing to go to the store. Right.
Well, that transition was happening slowly. But one of the interesting things is, if you go back to 2000, the fraction of online sales of total retail sales was like 1%. Okay, in 2000. Do you know what it is today?
Oh gosh, it's got to be huge.
No, it's 15%.
Oh.
15% of all sales are online.
Even this year?
E-commerce, even this year.
Interesting.
Yeah, it shot up a lot. It went from 12 to 16% during the pandemic, something like that.
Not as big as I would have
guessed.
And
if you think about it, I mean, still a lot of people go to the grocery store.
Yeah, that's true.
A lot of people go to the gas station. A lot of people do all kinds of things. And so we forget about those kinds of things,
right?
You're right. We're thinking about Christmas.
Yeah, I'm thinking about clothes. I'm thinking about, And
so that transition's been happening. I think that, so going back to the education part, it was not homogeneous, the effects across the board, and especially with the lower income individuals who are going to be hurt probably for a long time. And if you look at the numbers out there, Harvard and the OECD did a study, and they basically saw that like in Germany, the number of hours of schooling per day fell from like 7.2 to 3. And in some countries, by more than that.
Yeah.
And if you look at the increase in gaming and stuff like that, it's doubled. So these kids were not studying, they were playing these games. This is going to affect them for a very long time.
My son is the master of that. So he's 8th grade. He's an avid reader, which most people think isn't that great. Well, the problem is he escapes into the books.
Right.
And so it's so easy for him to have Zoom open. So he's logged in, but
Right.
little does the teacher know, he's got a side screen open with an electronic book, and he's gone into that fantasy world of that book. He's not paying any attention to what's happening.
Sure.
Even though the teacher thinks he's there, he's not really there.
Right. Logged in, but that's
But
right.
logged out.
And we've never experienced this before, where we don't know the effectiveness of online learning. There's no studies on that. We really don't know. So that's a big mystery. Again, it's going to affect people in lots and lots of different ways. Just not the cognitive skills, but what's called the socio-emotional skills. And you really need these kids to be around each other, to learn how to behave, to learn discipline amongst themselves. And that's a big part of learning. And, we forget about that.
My older one and I have been joking. I said, okay, when you go to college next year, because we're going to assume you actually get to go to college next year. I said, I think one of two things is going to happen. Either none of you are going to know how to socialize and you're going to be scared of each other, or you guys are going to be so happy to see each other. It's just going to be one raging party and
Right.
absolutely nothing academically happening. And I'm not sure which one's better, because
Right.
I feel like they need those
do.
emotional contacts again,
do.
and they need to figure out how to talk to human beings again.
No doubt about that. And so given that, I think we do have a chance right now. Number one, we really have to direct our resources to some of the lower income areas in our environment. We need to get good internet to them.
Yes.
I don't know if you've seen this, but like T-Mobile's coming out with something. You don't have to have cable. It's like $50 a month, and you get it from their satellites. You don't have to have cable and things like that. It's not here yet. It's in some places. It's not here. But getting those resources to the people who really need them. Again, you mentioned Montecito. They set up some pods, 5 families would hire a teacher,
Yep.
Fine. If you're living in a place where there's, 6 or 7 family members in a small area, very hard to learn, right? There's a lot of tension, hard to learn. But I think what we could think about as well is, how do we now move from completely in-person classes to maybe some online? That could work, and it could work for people who have a hard time commuting, or they need their kids to be home because they don't have daycare. So one thing we could think about is, there are certain teachers probably who are much better teaching online, right? And there's some teachers who are better in person. So that's another avenue where we could go to really think about how to separate, our teaching community. And so I think there's lots of things we can do. It's just a matter of getting the resources to the people who I think really need them.
Yeah, and they need to be ready to take action. We're asking our educational system to be innovative, and that can be really tough because it's steeped in so much government and many, many years of being run the way it is. And yes, I can see that. Once again, my son's going to go into high school next year, and I keep thinking he has A's and B's, but it's just because we nag him
Right.
and write him and make him do it. It's I can't really say it's because he's learned,
Right.
and the teachers have tried. It just doesn't work for him.
Of course.
So I'm looking at this and going, well, he's going to come in with A's and B's, and they're going to be ready to pick up 9th grade curriculum. But basically, he missed junior high.
Right.
So you've got to be prepared to teach an honors student who missed
You
7th
do.
and 8th grade.
You do.
So they, to pause and re-engineer the curriculum. I know we're asking a lot of our systems,
We
but
are. And I can tell you that, it's real funny that a lot of schools, especially private schools, parents are outraged. It's like, I'm paying you $70,000 a year, and now you're teaching my kid who's living at home, and you're teaching him online. Reduce my cost. Reduce my tuition. I can tell you, we spend so much now on resources trying to figure all this stuff out. The university costs are going up a lot because we haven't really done this. And so we're having to hire all kinds of new administrators, new tech people. We need new equipment to sort of do this correctly. So, just like the businesses in town who, like when they opened to close State Street to cars, and all of a sudden they said, okay, you can have Parklets. Well, is that going to be permanent? So now all these businesses came out, they built Parklets, they spent thousands and thousands of
Right.
dollars building these Parklets. And, one friend of mine who owns a business, he said the new, the small business relief package was written very poorly. At least he told me that it's written about gross revenue. And that's how you would get it. If your gross revenue has fallen, then you're more likely to get the relief package. Well, he said his gross revenue is about the same, but his costs have gone up a lot because now he has to build a parklet, hire more people, hire cleaning people. Right. So his costs have gone up. So he said, I'm not sure if I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
If this lasts another 6 months, it's going to be hard for a lot of these businesses.
They run on such a small margin.
That's right.
Many businesses
Exactly.
do.
Exactly.
Yeah. I know that. So what do you think? What's your guess? Are the Parklets here to stay? Are we going to get part of State Street to stay the way it is?
I kind of hope so. It feels very kind of European. Right. If there's any place in the world where you should have outdoor dining, it's Santa Barbara. Right? For heaven's sakes, if you go to Oslo, Norway in December, they all have outdoor dining.
Oh, that sounds cold.
It's cold, but you know what? Every chair has a blanket sitting on it.
That's awesome. So
people come, they sit outside. There are some heaters. And then they put a blanket on, and they sit outside. It's lovely.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
It's amazing. And so, again, the Parklets, if they knew it was going to be permanent, and the city, wanted to figure something else out, it wouldn't look the way it is now, right? We wouldn't have curbs, and we wouldn't have streets like that.
I keep thinking of 3rd Street Promenade.
Yeah,
in Santa Monica.
I'm not a big fan of 3rd Street Promenade, actually, and so I don't want us to call this thing State Street Promenade. I don't like the name Promenade, actually, because it reminds me of that. 3rd Street, when it first started, it was fine. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've been there lately. It's terrible.
I went this summer, and I agree. There's some different dynamic about it. It doesn't feel the same as it did 20 years ago.
And so what I think we need, and people have been working on this for years, as you know, but with the demise of Macy's on State Street and Nordstrom and all these different places, turning some of that into residential is the way to go. And I think getting some people downtown, it stops this thing from becoming a bad place. So I do think that it would be really nice and I think the city's amenable to it, to allowing some residential office space. Do I think offices are going away because everyone's going to work remotely? No.
No, I can tell you we have people that have realized remote is not fun.
It's not fun.
You got to do it, and it's okay, but you miss being around people.
You do.
You miss the camaraderie of the office
Right.
and the productivity that comes with that and the creativity.
I do think I think that's exactly right, and I do think that what you miss is like if I'm walking down the hall and it's like, hey Michelle, I'm meaning to talk to you. Do you have a minute just quickly in the office? And we kick around some ideas. That doesn't happen on Zoom. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to remember, I better Zoom Michelle real fast. That's just not going to happen.
I'm not going to see you when I walk from the kitchen to my bathroom. Yeah.
No. And so I worry that those people who are in the office, who've decided to stay in the office, they might have better opportunities than people who decide to work remotely. And a friend of mine, he works at Spotify in New York, they came out yesterday and said, you can work at home for the rest of your life. We don't care.
Oh, my gosh.
He went back and worked in the office. He's like, no, we have a good group. We talk to each other, kick around ideas. Yeah. It doesn't really happen much on Zoom.
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't. And, my teaching in Zoom is fine. You can't really wrap people on the back of the head in Zoom, though, very easily. And so, it's a little harder. But, I think in-person classes are better for most students.
Are the college kids showing up? I mean, are they more engaged, or is it?
They're about the same. They're about the same. Some are sleeping. Some have their. At least when I'm in class, I can see them sleeping. Right? I mean, here, like you said, they turn off their video, and I have no idea if they turn. But so some are sleeping. Some are very attentive. I tend to find fewer questions.
Right.
That they're a little more afraid to raise their hand or break in. So you lose that kind of, I don't know what it's called really, but this little social environment you can get in where...
Seems like energy. As the professor, especially knowing you're going to feed off the energy of the people in the room, and all of a sudden you're sitting alone at your desk staring at a screen.
Right.
There's energy that
there
gets
is energy.
Lost.
And, I actually don't mind when I see students talking to each other in class. Most of the time they're probably, like, what did he say? And that's great. I mean, they're involved, but, when they're just sitting at home, they're, I don't know, playing with the cat or whatever they do, So, I like the environment of in-person classes, and I think it's especially true for younger age kids.
I think so too. Did enrollment stay? Did you see a lot of students unenroll, disenroll? I'm not quite sure what the word is.
Yeah. No. in fact, during these times, you tend to see a pickup because people are kind of worried about the future more. And, if they're unemployed, it's like, I better get back to school. So I don't know the numbers for like City College and things, but I would be shocked if there weren't more people, enrolling in City College and UCSB. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, as you probably saw, I was paying close attention to the application statistics for UCs, and they were through the roof. Every single one of the UCs.
Yes. No, it's
so
crazy.
That's going to be an interesting.
It is. So
cycle.
So I think during times of recessions, especially kind of longer term recessions, you do see a spike up in people going back to school.
Yeah, re-educate, re-prepare.
Yeah.
What else, Peter? Anything else you want to share with us before we go back out there and take care of our restaurants and our servers and our...
Yeah, I just think that, we have to be patient. We've gone this far. We have roughly 450,000 deaths in the United States. So I think, especially for the older people, the vaccine's right around the corner. Stay home, stay safe, keep social distancing. It's not that much longer before everyone will be vaccinated. So I just think right now is kind of a good time to do that. And I think we have to free up the businesses a little bit and realize, by the way, like some universities, when they said we're going to be in person, like University of North Carolina did this a lot, like 6 months ago. They're like, okay, we're going to be in person. Turns out that, okay, all the students come back, and guess what? They had a spike up in infections. That's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
Right? And it's going to happen. And so we have to, and I'm not saying we're trading off lives for the economy. That's not at all what the issue is. I think that's kind of a false pretense. So I do think that, we have to allow people to socially distance. We have to let businesses make sure that they are helping people do that. And so if businesses are doing that, I would be happy to go to a restaurant if I felt safe.
Correct.
And so the restaurant has every incentive to make it sure that I'm safe. So I don't want to see long-term unemployment anymore. I think that's going to be very hurtful. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I've told our public health department, I know you're looking at COVID illnesses and COVID deaths, but during this time period when people are unemployed this long and getting depressed, there's opioid problems, there's alcoholism, there's child abuse, domestic abuse. Those things also have to be tracked. And we have to care about that as well. So, it's a big issue. There's no real silver bullet out there that is going to fix everything overnight. But I think we do have to maintain some social distancing, wear masks, even though I hate it. Your glasses fog up, I know. Yes. Somebody needs to, there's an entrepreneurial something there that somebody needs to find that hack for us. Or maybe people are going to be like, well, if this is 6 more months, I am going to get contacts from now on.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Maybe it's time to just
so
bite the bullet. So
contact sales are going to go up.
Yeah, or the laser surgery, right?
That's
Suddenly
right.
all of the eye surgeons are going to be
That's right.
the new
Or
millionaires.
little fans that blow down on your glasses
there
or something.
You go. There you go. For those of you listening, that's your idea right there. A little fan on the sunglasses or on the glasses. Well, thank you so much, Peter. We really appreciate your time today. And thank you to all of our listeners for joining us. If you'd like to learn more about the Economic Forecast Project, you can visit their website at, are you ready? It's a bunch of letters, efp.ucsb.edu. And Peter, thank you for those informational sessions you've been scheduling with public health, with Dr. Fitzgibbon and the rest of her team. I've been participating in those, and those have been really good. So I would encourage all of you to check those out too. You gathered together great people.
No, they're so great. Vaughn Dornoso, Lynn, they're just amazing. And I can tell you, and when I said thanks to them over the last thing, they're working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week.
So much.
And she's emailing me at 11:15 p.m. and I said, Vaughn, go to sleep. And she's like, almost done, just another 45 minutes of emails.
But I can't. I've got an idea. I've got something else I can make a difference with.
So, we really have to give some thanks to our healthcare system. And, they're just doing great. And don't blame them. They're not the ones not having the vaccine. Believe me. If they had it, they would come to your house, believe me. So
making the best choice they can with the information they can, right?
That's
and all we can do is learn. And like you said, there's going to be a next time, so let's learn.
Yep.
And let's do better next time. Nobody likes to think about that, but like you said, history says, and travel says.
Right. Great. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you, Peter. If you'd like to learn more about American Riviera Bank, you can visit us at www.americanriviera.bank. Thanks again for listening.